Hello, my friend. Welcome to a new episode of Talk Music Talk with Boice. I am Boice. This is my podcast. You are listening to it. Hopefully you will enjoy it and get something from it. Thank you for checking it out. Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, established and emerging, from singers and singer-songwriters, composers, to music therapists and music journalists. And on this new episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to author, critic, Rolling Stone writer, Christopher R. Weingarten. I first met him this past July when he was a part of a live Talk Music Talk podcast at the historic Strand bookstore here in New York City. I had did a panel with 4 of the 33 and a third writers book series, and Christopher's book is on Public Enemies. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Highly recommend it. We had a great conversation. We talk about being a writer and music journalism. We talk about why he started writing, his influences. We get his thoughts on writing about artists you love versus ones you might not. We also talk about what he thinks on writing before social media and after it and how that can affect you as a music critic. We also talk about the music that he likes and music trends and so much more. This conversation was recorded at a restaurant in Brooklyn, so excuse the background sound and occasional chewing sounds, which I admit were mostly mine. This took place less than a week after Aretha Franklin had passed, so I asked him about a review of one of her albums that had appeared on Rolling Stone's online site. Here it is. Great conversation. I enjoyed talking to Christopher. We chatted briefly at the podcast event, but it was nice to sit down with him and get his thoughts on so many things. Here it is, without further ado, my conversation with Christopher R. Weingarten. Enjoy. It thrilled me today when I saw that your Aretha greatest album was Who's Zooming Who.
Oh, you know,
that is one of my favorites. How did that happen?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite album, but I do have a very soft spot in my heart for whenever boomer rock icons attempted to put on a little of the neon of new wave. The production on those records is very nostalgic to me, and hers is, obviously, clearly, as evidenced by the huge hits on that record, one of the more successful experiments in venturing, the 60s generation venturing into the big, scary MTV Videodrome. It was a fascinating time to see who lived and who died. I always love the example of ZZ Top, some these crusty Texas beardos, turning themselves into these weird postmodern aliens who could try on all sorts of different types of music, working within the visual medium of MTV. It was just a masterful transition for those guys, and not everyone was so lucky. But 80s Aretha is awesome, and in working on the Aretha, the 50 essential Aretha songs, we were working on that, and I got really deep into a lot of the areas of her career that I wasn't so intimately familiar with. Everyone knows Respect. Everyone knows Think. These are iconic songs, and we, of course, like a lot of us, remember the Who's Zooming Who era, or in my case, a few years after the Who's Zooming Who era. But she has the early 80s Quiet Storm R&B stuff is really good. There's a lot of really funky stuff in the early 70s. It's really good. I'm ashamed to admit how that I was unfamiliar with Amazing Grace. It's a 2 LP gospel recording, and it's just astonishing. And I wanted to make sure, her there's a 10-minute reading of Amazing Grace on there. This is gorgeous, and I think I ended up putting it there, and I don't think anyone challenged me on it, but it's like number 6 on the essential Aretha songs, because and I'd never heard it before, and it just blew my mind how good it was.
How did you decide upon what you would write about? Was that
for the
essential songs and which album?
Well, for the essential, I didn't write any of the essential songs. I just sort of helped put the list together.
Okay.
But I wanted in helping put it together. What really struck me is just the absolute breadth and depth of her catalog, and her ability to move from genre to genre. It's the line I think we used. I don't remember if it was my line or Will Hermes' line. I think it was my line. He can challenge me on this, but it's it not only speaks to the malleability of her voice, but how America was shaped by it for so many years. So it's yes, she could, her beats and coups could anchor rap songs.
Yeah.
She could sing the hook of a huge house song. She could be a new wave star. She could be a neo soul star with Lauryn Hill. She could cover Adele and sing opera on the Grammys. It never seemed like she was out of her element in the same way of in going back, it never seems like a weird juxtaposition in the same way as the Rolling Stones are messing with sampling now, and the Doors are collaborating with Skrillex. It's not like.
What do you think that was about her?
I have no. I mean, again, I want to say, clearly, she had the greatest voice in the history of the genre, hands down, just the absolute greatest, most amazing voice. But on top of that, it really is what it's where we get our ideas of rock and soul and gospel. It's where America understands what a voice is supposed to sound like. So when she's doing a duet with Annie Lennox, who's British, but it's besides the point. When she's doing a duet with Annie Lennox, it's all those years of Aretha filtered into the aqueducts to make an Annie Lennox. When she's covering an Adele song, it's all that Aretha, all those decades of Aretha helped create this, what we know as Adele. It's just such an essential part of our understanding of music itself that, is my theory. But that element of it was just amazing to me to really get into, because you do an essential song. You do an essential songs list. It's a lot of times it's just the greatest hits. It's just the stuff we know, and it's man, Aretha was just Aretha had a very, very deep, very, very wide breadth of material.
And so is there a difference, or how do you, as a music writer, write about someone who you respect, like Aretha, and then someone who you may not be as excited about to write about that?
Well, I feel like all of this exists outside of me. It's all, strains of America and our sociology and our, the things we consume and the things that we think and the politics and, all these things that, these interlocking workings of society. These are all things that I exist outside of.
Okay.
When it comes to, making something like Aretha, which I love, or something like Travis Scott, which I'm not the hugest fan of, but it's trying to pinpoint what those strands are, trying to connect those dots and see where the ladder goes. Like that's interesting to me, whether I like the music or not. When I like the music, it's the most fun possible. I love right now one of the most exciting things in pop music to me is I don't even think we have a name for it. It's this kind of like uncanny valley sound, like hyper real early 90s computer, Ryuichi Sakamoto, like just very, very real and and like that line between real and artificial, and it was sort of I think it sort of started getting a lot of attention through One Oh Tricks Point Never in the late aughts, and now it's like you can start hearing that sound in things like Charlie XCX and PC music, and what's the Big Fish Theory? What's the rapper who does that?
Vince Staples.
Vince Staples, thank you. There's these elements of that, weird, uncanny lawnmower man virtual reality, that's like slowly like seeping into pop music, and like and I love that sound. So like and I love that feeling. So that's really exciting to me. Well,
when did you figure out as a writer that you didn't necessarily have to like what you were listening to write about?
Boy, that's a great question. One of my first jobs was working at CMJ New Music Report, which was a trade magazine. So it's going to college radio stations to sort of tell them, here's what's out, here's here's what you can add to your playlist, here's what various people are pushing, and and since it was a trade magazine, it was business, so you couldn't be negative. You had to, it was basically advertising copy. So you had to sort of approach every record review. If you didn't like it, you had to approach it from sort of a factual standpoint. Like, what are the facts about this record's existence? And I don't know, like I think also my personal taste of what's good and what's exciting is so far removed from the critical conversation right now, and I don't know if it's my age. I don't know if I'm just a fucking weirdo, but I do feel like I'm not. I don't get excited about the same things a lot of people are getting excited about, and but I still think that it's exciting that there are things that people can get excited about.
Okay, so then does the excitement for you come from the writing itself as opposed to what you might?
The excitement comes in that Venn diagram where it connects. I would say one of the most, probably the most exciting, thing for me in the last few years was when I was at Spin and Death Grips was in hiding, and I find Death Grips' music just incredible, very visceral. It's it's everything I loved about the Rick Rubin era and the sampling era and, the early 80s punk rock and noise and, all these energies that I love combined with this very online persona, very aware of online culture, interacting with it, creating in it, speaking in its rhythms and languages and slangs, and that all was very exciting to me. So it's like that period where we are in the age of the overshare. When they're just not showing up to shows and not doing interviews and just are basically missing, that's exciting. That was exciting, and it's the internet was excited and they got everyone excited, even though they were basically doing nothing.
Because they're not playing along with what most artists would do.
Exactly. And that is it really is, I really do say that the most radical thing an artist can do right now is say no. Because everything is take what you can get, do what you can, do it for the exposure, and the idea of selling out is, the concept of selling out is almost alien to anyone under 30. The rules have changed. So it's I love when bands say no. One of my favorite examples is that band Gloss, and I do not know the specifics of the makeup of their band, but it definitely was, there's some trans members, definitely not a big cisgender vibe in that band. I don't know the exact specifics of it. Yeah. So, but they got a lot of attention, and Epitaph basically said, please come to our label. And they not only said no, they aired out Epitaph's offer. They put the number out there, and then they broke up. it's for a band to make an impact like they did, not only politically, but just with the attention that they got as a band, and then to just say no to everything. I love that. I love that. It's so rare.
So do you think artists are afraid that because a 50-year career plus career like Aretha may or may not happen anymore, that they're afraid I got to take everything I can?
I just think it's the Wild West out there. I don't think anyone has any idea. I mean, look at what happened. Look at how the music industry looks compared to literally, not even 20 years ago. We were selling more records than any point in the history of time, and it's and now we don't even know if we should put out a CD. It changes so fast, and no one knows what the rules are going to be, what's going to be, coming back, what's going to be, it's funny, watching a lot of the New York scene of I am Christopher is doing air quotes right now. Doing air quotes, the early New York rock is back scene, I definitely would not have called it to say that would have legs, even though it's not surprising. No. I wouldn't have called it that a lot of bands, I definitely would not have called this, the bedroom pop scene. I definitely would not have thought that someone like Rex Orange County could have, he just had a ginormous audience when I walked by his set at Panorama. insular, lo-fi music, to be, playing these festival stages so fast. I couldn't have seen that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to tell you that when Frankie Cosmos or whatever hit 7 years ago. You can't tell with these things. Mm-hmm. You don't know. It's time. Time makes these decisions for you, and economics.
Well, how long have you been writing?
I started professionally in 2002. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's when I started working at CMJ, and then I've.
Why'd you start writing?
Oh boy. Well, I don't know. I always had this sort of. I think about this stuff a lot, and I want to get it out. I think about music a lot, and I had a long period where I was kind of vacillating between like, am I going to be a musician or am I going to be a writer? And I'm sort of doing the little dance of like, I'm going to go on tour, but write reviews in the van, and it's and it wasn't. I think there was a moment. There was like a moment where I'm like, I don't remember the specifics of it, but I sort of just remember this feeling of like sometimes we'd be playing a show and you'd think about like all the stuff you did to like, drag a drum kit across town, and and it's like, and then there's a part of me that's just like, I wish I was just watching a show.
Yeah.
There's this thing going on across town, and you're in New York, so it's like there's this thing going across town. I kind of wish I was at, So I don't know. I think writing sort of facilitates that lifestyle a little more than the weird limbo you live in as a touring musician of I don't know. Maybe I'm too much of a normie. I don't know if I was actually. I don't know if I was actually cut out for it.
Could you play drums?
I did. Yeah.
So what came first, the drums or writing?
I mean, I started playing drums in like 5th grade.
Okay.
So like a snare drum in 5th grade. But it's like I definitely was a drummer first, but and. I don't know.
So I'm always curious when I read like someone who's a critic.
It's like the stereotype is true. Like I am literally a failed musician. Okay. Like it's absolutely.
I wasn't going to say that.
It's absolutely true.
I wasn't going there. What I was going to do.
But you know what? Like it's like I think. I don't know. Like I also think that like. No, it's true.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
That wasn't my line, but my line was. I always wonder when someone is a critic, like, how do you get to think that, okay, my opinion is important enough to put out into the world? Because I always worry, too, like, if I was doing that, would I feel comfortable, like, being so definitive in what I'm saying and, like, okay, everyone should at least pay some attention to what I have to think?
I mean,
Or do you ever feel self-conscious about that?
I mean, like, that's eroded so much in the last few years. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just like... The internet is nothing but everyone's opinions right now. Yeah. It's almost the opposite of like, why is my opinion? Especially when I notice like, oh, this isn't exactly how everyone else sees this.
Yeah. As someone who was writing pre-internet, right, or close to, or pre-social media.
Pre-social media, yeah.
Was it hard to adapt to that anybody can have a critique? Or...
Yes, yeah. I was a huge pain in the ass about it. Like I was a big whiner about it. And I made a big stink, and I gave a speech at a tech thing about how, our jobs were being devalued and how, this is, moving from the land of, of learned experts and instead to the cheerleading squad of interns looking for free tickets and a pat on the head. And it's just like, I believe that at the time. But, as I get older, it's starting to feel like, why is this a job again? Who possessed me to think that this was a job? Man, I need to run up on Charles Aaron and Craig Mark sometime and be like, what did you guys gas my head up with?
Were these the writers that made you think?
These are some of the guys. Well, these are some of the guys who shaped my worldview when I was, a teenager, poring over Spin magazine. These were some of the writers who guided that era. Eric Weisbard, Ann Powers, Rob Sheffield. These were reading their stuff made me believe that this, it's until I was well in my 30s that this was that this was a profession. I joke because it is a profession for me and it's great. And I love my job, but as the years go by, it's and especially with social media, having seen what the last 10 years of Twitter and Facebook have done, so much of what critics do now is just collecting other people's opinions. I think one of the weirdest phenomenon was with the Justin Timberlake record, the last Justin Timberlake record. And, there was a real shift in how we perceived him as he was and it started because
the trailer,
and it was I forgot who pointed it out, but it's literally just him standing in front of a tree, and then there's multiple think pieces about he's pivoting to whiteness and this is what happens after everyone's done pilfering from black music and all this stuff. And meanwhile, when the record came out, no, he's quoting Jay-Z and this song, this song sounds like I said one of the songs sounds like Sturgill Simpson and the Yin Yang Twins, and it's no, he's not pivoting to anything. But the reviews of that record had to set it up with the internet thinks this, and that force is as a critic, you are, you're with it or you're against it. You repeat it or you ignore it. And it's a conversation. It's a conversation now.
Well, let's talk about my introduction to meeting you was through your book.
Yes.
Yeah, Takes a Nation of Millions.
A fantastic event in the Rare Book Room at the Strand bookstore, which I have to say I had never been in before.
Really?
I don't think
a lot of people have not.
I don't think I've ever been in the Rare Book Room at the Strand. It's an awesome thing.
Had you always wanted to write a book, or
I still want to write books.
Okay.
I still want to write some books.
How did you come about to do that with your book?
I pitched there's a very strict and well I think it's even on their site now, but there's a strict pitching policy at 33 and a third, and I gave them my pitch, and Yeah, it was a lot of it was a lot of work. And
how long did you write? Take for you to write
it was long, man. I mean, it's like, and it's also like I'm free. I mean, it helped because I was freelancing at the time, and it's, man, like, there's people like Dave Itzkoff where I just like, he's working constantly, and like I could see his story, like I could see his byline, and like he still has the time to churn out these books. It's like, when are you writing these books, man? Like I have no, like
Are you a quick writer, or it takes you long to get out what you want?
Well, I'm a slow typer.
Okay.
I'm an embarrassingly slow typer.
Packing away.
Yeah, I've got a system. It's not home keys, but it's definitely a system.
Okay. Home keys would save you a lot of time, Christopher.
Man, I'm almost 40, man, and I get there's no room for home keys in this brain anymore. I just want to be home. I don't want no. So it's like I'm a slow typer. I definitely like had a time where I would pore over sentences. I'm trying to be a little more loose these days, but it's not an easy thing when you have to do your day job. You have to, if you anyone who is writing a book on top of their day job is like, man, you are please get some rest after this is all done. Please go on vacation.
Because a book like yours has a lot of research.
It was mostly research. Yeah, it was mostly just digging into stuff and like, acquainting myself with, parts of music history I wasn't familiar with, and going deeper into the parts I was familiar with, and connecting the dots.
Yeah. Is there like how do you feel about, like, say when you're writing online that people may not come back to that in the same way that come with the book, that you may not have the time to shape a sentence?
I don't know what anyone's reading anymore, and it's like I think part of me still writes for the internet like it's going to be there forever. Yeah. When it's like really evident that it's not going to be there forever, and it's really evident that, like, the way all these sites turn over, like stuff just disappears and goes away, and that's it. And I still write like, okay, yeah, this is going to be the definitive, for a lot of stuff. Like I still like, this is going to be the it's funny, like it's like everyone is like big on there's like a big wave of like corn articles. This like reappreciating corn.
Okay,
and it's
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's a big hot wave of links right now, and it's like and I'm just like, I wrote that piece 5 years ago, and it's like I'm not like, it's not like I'm upset because there's definitely like room for more opinions on corn, I guess, but it's also like that's how fast your statement or whatever gets decimated by newer ones. This constant churn of new content. I almost wonder about like what it's like for these artists who I don't know, like it maybe like back in the day, I guess they would have to like do a bunch of interviews for alt weeklies and local newspapers and stuff, and now it's just like websites that might not exist in 5 years. So maybe it's not that different.
Where are you looking? Where do you see the way writing will change, or where its direction?
Oh boy. I mean, this is such a sad thing to say. It's all driven by market concerns. Like, just like that is one thing that you can really watch of just like, the money's in Google, searches. So everyone write for the best search engine optimization. Okay, now the money's in Facebook. Everyone write for the most clicky Facebook headline. Oh, like everyone's moving to long form. Everyone wants to have their snowfall. Their snowfall story. Everyone, it's, Vice being a great example of this. How they started as like this this nihilistic factory of ironic racism and ironic sexism, and then the market wouldn't bear that out anymore. So now they're like, now all the pieces are very woke and very, very politically minded, and it's the same fucking company. It's like, the only thing that determines all of this is what the market dictates, and the fact that the entire media landscape is increasingly, at the mercy of Google and Facebook, two tech companies. People. It's like the future of journalism is what those guys say the future of journalism is going to be.
So how do you keep it fresh or interesting for you in light of all this?
Well, I like to get tied up. Writing. No. I mean, there's. First of all, I'm lucky that I have editors who trust me, but I think a lot of it is just I think a lot of it is using other parts of the internet to find the interesting stories, and I think that you can not to a magician never reveals his secrets, but what's fascinating to me is like, I recently did an article on the return of the floppy disk as a music format with vaporwave labels.
Really?
And where it's like, this nostalgic, lo-fi, very keen to aesthetic genre, has occasionally cheeky, it has a format that, you can fit a lo-fi, very, very highly compressed MP3 on, and it's like this fun, collector's toy. And, the only reason I found that is because I was, clicking around on Discogs, and I'm just like, why are there so many floppy disks available? So, like the other, the ways that the internet processes music in spite of the media landscape, removed from the media landscape, is fascinating to me. Like that's more important to me than the conversation in a lot of ways. Like it's like you can watch how certain bands slowly become like part of a new canon, that's being built. How certain like those things are going to happen outside of what Twitter and Facebook are saying,
So kind of wrapping up, are there any artists you are excited about, contemporary artists?
The most exciting music being made right now for me, and like I know they're not new, they've been around for like 30 years, but like the new Autiker stuff is just out of this world, and I love that they have basically turned themselves into an electronic jam band where they're taking these inhuman rhythms and these textures and these combinations that I can't imagine a human coming up with or being comfortable with, and just like creating these long form pieces. Like the last album. The new album that just came out is almost 8 hours long. Okay. And it's just awesome. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, that's the stuff that gets me excited right now. The stuff that's like almost outside of the human experience. Stuff like, One O Tricks Point Never, obviously. A lot of the stuff on Pan Records I like a lot. I don't know. Okay. So, a bunch of nerd shit is my answer.
No problem with that. So, Christopher, where is the best place for people to check you out online?
You can look for my byline on rollingstone.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter at 1000 times yes, at 1000TIMESYES.
Sounds good. Did I leave anything out?
It's a big world out there, man. I can keep going.
Sounds good, man. Thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Wait, can we do a high five or something where the microphones are going to pick it up?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we can pick it up.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. I love it.
There you have it, my conversation with Christopher R. Weingarten. Again, I highly recommend his book on Public Enemy. I will put a link in the show notes for you to get a copy for yourself. I am online, so why don't you check me out there at talkmusictalk.com for more podcast information and to stream every episode of the show. You can also find me on social media like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at This Is Boice. And I have some call to actions for you. If you enjoyed this episode with Christopher, please share it on social media. And you can tag me. I would appreciate that. You can also leave a 5-star rating and or review wherever you happen to be listening to this episode, because this all helps to increase the Talk Music Talk audience. There is also a Talk Music Talk app. It is free wherever you like to get your apps, or you can listen to the podcast pretty much anywhere and everywhere where you can do your streaming, like iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. Just search for Talk Music Talk. One more final place, SoundCloud. You can check out the podcast there, soundcloud.com/This Is Boice. See how I switched it up on you? Instead of Talk Music Talk, This Is Boice. I hope you got that. It's all in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.